The fading light, the soft rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor was a sound Clara had come to know, as well as her own breath. It marked the passage of time in the pristine, antiseptic world of her hospital room, where the view of the Manhattan skyline was the only thing that felt real anymore. Late afternoon sun streamed through the slatted blinds, painting warm stripes across the white sheets that seemed to swallow her whole. At 37, Clara felt a century old, her body worn, thin by the relentless progression of a rare blood disease that had stolen the vibrancy from her skin and the strength from her limbs. Her dark hair, once her pride, was gone, replaced by a collection of soft cotton turbans that her sister Nina brought her, each one a small attempt at normalcy. She twisted the wide gold band of her wedding ring around her thin finger, was to loose now, a symbol of a life that was also slipping away. Julian was supposed to have come by lunchtime. Another text had arrived an hour ago. Darling, crisis at the gallery. A client is being impossible. I'll try for tonight. It was the fourth time this week, double quotes, Ms. Delaney. A gentle voice pulled her from her thoughts. Dr. Evans stood in the doorway, her expression a careful blend of professionalism and compassion. A chart was held in her hands. Do you feel up for reviewing your latest results? Clara offered. A weak smile. I think I already know what they're going to say, Doctor. Before Dr. Evans could respond, the door swung open and Nina hurried in, her arms full of art books and a takeaway bag that smelled of garlic and herbs. I'm here. The subway was a nightmare. At 34, Nina was a whirlwind. Of energy, her own dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, her eyes, the same shade of hazel as Clara's, filled with a fierce love and a simmering anger that had been building for months. She rushed to Clara's side, dropping the books on a chair and taking her sister's hand. You're just in time, Doctor, Evans said, closing the door softly. I was about to go over Clara's scans. The air in the room grew heavy. Doctor. Evans pulled a chair close to the bed and began to speak in measured, clear terms. The experimental treatment they had pinned their hopes on had failed.
Yes.
The disease was advancing more aggressively than their models had predicted. Clara listened, her face a calm mask, while Nina's grip on her hand tightened to the point of pain. How long? Clara asked, her voice surprisingly steady. Dr. Evans's professional demeanor softened. Without intervention, T628. Weeks. I'm so sorry, Clara. Nina let out a choked sound, a sob caught in her throat. But Clara simply nodded, as if receiving a confirmation she had long expected. Thank you for your honesty, Doctor. After Dr. Evans left, Nina turned to her sister, tears finally breaking free. We have to call Julian. He needs to be here for this. He needs to know. A bitter smile touched Clara's lips. It's busy, Nina. The gallery, you know how it is. Busy. Nina's voice rose, sharp with frustration. He's your husband. And where has all that busyness gotten him? Because it certainly hasn't been paying for this room, your parents' money. Is it even still there? Clara sighed. Flash of unease crossing her features. The inheritance from her parents' estate had been substantial, enough to ensure she wanted for nothing. Julian, with his smooth charm and business degree, had insisted on managing it, claiming it was the least he could do to ease her burden. But lately, there had been unexplained withdrawals, vague mentions of bad investments. A light knock interrupted. Then, a new nurse entered, her smile bright and practiced. Time for your evening meds, Mrs. Delaney. She was strikingly beautiful, with sleek auburn hair and emerald green eyes that seemed to take in every detail of the room. Her name was Sienna, and she had only been on this floor for a few weeks. It was always assigned to Clara's evening care, as Sienna prepared the injection. Clara was suddenly overcome with a wave of nausea, unlike anything she'd felt before. She barely made it to the small bathroom before she was sick. Nina was right behind her, holding her shoulders. This is new, Nina said, her worry palpable. We should tell Dr. Evans. But Clara had gone very still, her eyes wide. Nina, she whispered, What's the date? The 18th. Why? Clara's hands began to tremble. I'm late, very late. Late for what? Nina asked before understanding dawned on her face, her eyes dropping to Clara's stomach. Oh, Clara? No? Is it even possible? The treatments. I need a test. Clara said, her voice shaking. Please. The following hour was a blur. Nina returned from the hospital pharmacy, her face pale. In the privacy of the bathroom, they waited. When the second pink line appeared, clear and undeniable, Clara stared at it in disbelief. A tear traced a path down her gaunt cheek. This can't be happening, they said. It was impossible. We have to tell Julian, Nina insisted, already reaching for her phone. No, Clara said, grabbing her sister's wrist with a strength she didn't know she still possessed. Not yet. I need to think. That night, alone in the dim light of her room, Clara couldn't shake a deep, gnawing feeling that something was profoundly wrong. Julian's distance, the missing money, his constant excuses, and there was something about Sienna, the new nurse. Something in the way her green eyes had lingered on the photograph of Julian on the bedside table. A look that was far too familiar for a stranger. Little did Clara know that at that very moment, Julian, Delaney was not at his gallery. He was toasting with champagne in a dimly lit West Village wine bar. Across the small table, Sienna, who had traded her nurse's scrubs for an elegant black dress, ran a finger along the rim of her glass, a triumphant smile on her lips. 2. New beginnings, she whispered, her voice a silken promise. Julian clinked his glass against hers, his handsome face devoid of any guilt. To us, he responded, his gaze warm. To Clara's incredibly generous parents, may they rest in peace.
Outside, a cold autumn wind rattled the windows.
A precursor to the storm that was gathering, a tempest of betrayal and a revenge.
That would be delivered not with a shout, but with a silent, devastating reflection. The days following the revelation of her pregnancy folded into one another, a strange tapestry of fragile hope and crushing reality. The tiny life growing inside Clara felt like a miracle, a defiant spark in the gathering darkness. But it also complicated everything. Dr. Evans laid out the brutal calculus with a gentle voice that couldn't soften the numbers. Continuing the pregnancy meant halting the most aggressive treatments. It would accelerate the disease, trading her already limited time for a slim, fragile chance for the baby. Instead of 6 to 8 weeks, Dr. Evans said, her eyes filled with a profound sadness. We could be looking at 3, maybe 4. And the baby? The odds are not good, Clara. You would be sacrificing what little time you have left for a possibility. Clara's hand rested on her still flat stomach. This baby is the only part of me that might get to see the world. Have to try. Fortified by this new, desperate purpose, she finally mustered the courage to call Julian. The phone rang until it went to voicemail. She called again and again. On the 5th try, he answered, his voice tight with impatience. Clara, I'm in the middle of a very important negotiation. Can this wait? No, Julian, it can't. I need you to come to the hospital. It's urgent. There was a muffled sound, a faint whisper of a laugh in the background that made Clara's skin prickle. Listen, darling, the client is right here. I'll try to swing by tomorrow, I promise. The line went dead. Nina, who had been pretending to read one of the art books, slammed it shut. That's it. Not asking anymore. I'm hiring someone. Nina, don't, Clara pleaded, but her protest was weak, hollowed out by the whisper she'd heard on the phone. No, Clara. This ends now. His important negotiations are a lie. His crisis at the gallery is a lie. I can feel it. Nina's jaw was set, her eyes blazing with a protective fury. If he's stealing from you while you lie here, I will find out. The investigator, a quiet, efficient man named Mr. Croft, worked with a speed that was both impressive and devastating. 2 days later, Nina returned to the hospital room, her face a mask of controlled rage, thick manila envelope clutched in her hand. You need to see this, she said, her voice trembling not with sadness, but with pure, undiluted anger. The contents of the envelope were a meticulous record of betrayal. There were photographs of Julian and Sienna at intimate corner tables in expensive restaurants. There were shots of them entering a gleaming new luxury apartment building on the Upper East Side, his arm around her waist. There were receipts, blown up and highlighted, for jewelry from Cartier. For weekend trips to Vermont, all charged to accounts linked to Clara's inheritance. But the photograph that stopped Clara's heart was the last one. It was taken from across the street through the large windows of an art gallery, Julian's gallery. He stood behind Sienna, his arms wrapped around her, his chin resting on her shoulder as they looked at a painting.
Nice.
It was a pose of intimate possession.
No.
The date stamp on the photo was from the previous afternoon during the important negotiation. He couldn't leave. There's more, Nina said, her voice gravelly. She pulled out bank statements. He's liquidated almost everything. Over $2 million, Clara. He's been pouring it into that apartment, into her, into plans to expand the gallery. And her, Nina pointed a shaking finger at a photocopy of an employment record. Sienna isn't a nurse. She's a failed actress he met at a bar months ago. She used a forged certificate to get the job here. She was never here to care for you. She was here to watch you. Clara stared at the evidence, feeling the world she thought she knew shatter into a million sharp pieces. The nausea returned, but this time it was born of a heartbreak so profound it felt physical. Then cutting through the pain came a cold, clear surge of anger. It was sharp and focused, a blade being honed. How long? She asked, her voice low and surprisingly steady. According to the investigator, they met just a few weeks after your diagnosis. She knew exactly who he was, who you were, and about the money. This was all planned. That night, as the city lights twinkled outside her window, Clara lay awake, the cold anger solidifying into a plan. The baby inside her, her miracle, felt like a fading echo. The stress, the heartbreak, her body itself fit, was all too much. She had lost it quietly, tragically, just days after seeing the photographs. She had not told Julian. He had not earned that grief. He continued his brief, distracted visits, never noticing the profound change in her, the light of hope that had been extinguished. He talked of market downturns and delayed payments, weaving his web of lies while she watched, silent and knowing. Sienna continued her shifts, the audacity of her performance breathtaking. She would touch Clara's arm with fake sympathy, her green eyes glinting with a secret victory. Every touch felt like a violation. One afternoon, as Sienna was adjusting Clara's foredrip, she tried to make conversation. "Wow. Your husband is so devoted," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "It must be a comfort, knowing he's working so hard for your future." Clara turned her head slowly on the pillow, fixing Sienna with a gaze that had become unnervingly direct. "Yes, Julian has always been a devoted actor."
Allow me.
"Sienna, does the Art Deco lamp in your new apartment cast a nice light on the Cartier bracelet?" The 4 bag slipped from Sienna's hands, crashing to the floor and splashing saline everywhere. The perfectly composed mask of her face shattered, revealing the calculating woman beneath.
Ow.
Fear flashed in her emerald eyes. "I don't know what you're talking about, don't you?" Clara's voice was soft, almost conversational. "That's odd. I have a lovely photograph of you wearing it while my husband was holding you in his gallery. The diamonds must sparkle under the track lighting." Sienna fled the room without another word. She never returned to the oncology floor, calling in sick and then resigning abruptly. With the enemy gone from her immediate sight, Clara turned all her remaining energy to her plan. She made private calls to her parents' old lawyer, the venerable Mr. Sterling. His voice, raspy with age and affection for her, was a comfort. She had new documents drafted, a will that was a masterpiece of poetic justice. She set in motion a series of events that would unfold long after her heart had stopped beating. Mr. Sterling visited often, his kind eyes often wet with tears as they worked. "Are you certain about this, my dear?" he asked one afternoon. Holding the final document, "It's not too late to change your mind." Clara looked toward the window, where a single stubborn bird was perched on the ledge. "I'm sure, Mr. Sterling, sometimes the most lasting punishment isn't taking everything away from a person. It's forcing them to live with the one thing they've been running from, themselves." Dina worried that this quest for revenge was consuming Clara's final days, but she seemed more at peace than she had in months. A grim purpose had replaced the despair. "This isn't about revenge, Nina," Clara explained one evening. "It's about balance. It's about making sure that when I'm gone, he can't simply move on and forget." He'll have a constant daily reminder of the man he chose to become. As the autumn leaves fell and the days grew shorter, Clara's condition worsened. The cancer, unleashed and unforgiving, spread rapidly. Julian, oblivious, continued his charade, too preoccupied with his phone and his new life to see the final cold determination in his wife's eyes. What he didn't know was that the wheels were already in motion.
No.
The papers were signed, the arrangements made, the trap set. All that was left was for Clara to close her eyes. And outside, the first snow of winter began to fall. A silent, clean blanket over the city, obscuring the truth that was waiting to be revealed. The world outside Clara's window narrowed to the size of a postage stamp, a frozen tableau of gray skies and skeletal trees. The vibrant energy of the city seemed to fade into a dull hum, matching the slowing rhythm of her own body. The fierce, cold anger that had sustained her through the discovery of Julian's betrayal had now burned down to a quiet, smoldering ember of resolve. Her work was almost done. Julian's visits became even more infrequent, his excuses more transparent. When he did appear, he brought the chill of the outside air with him, along with the faint, clinging scent of an unfamiliar, expensive perfume that was not her own. He was a ghost in her room, already halfway to his new life. On a particularly bleak December morning, he arrived unannounced, dressed not in one of his sharp gallery suits, but in casual clothes that looked new and expensive. He paced the room, unable to meet her eyes, his fingers nervously twisting the gold band on his left hand. "Clara," he began, his voice a poor imitation of concern, "we need to talk about the financial situation, the market. It's taken a terrible turn. Some of our investments, your parents' investments, they've taken a significant hit." He launched into a rehearsed monologue about liquidity and asset allocation, his words empty and smooth. He talked about the need for belt-tightening, about possibly moving her to a more cost-effective care facility. From her corner, Nina made a sound of pure disgust. "A cost-effective facility? You mean one that wouldn't notice you're fucking the help and spending my sister's money on her?" Julian's head snapped up, his face paling beneath its tan. "What did you just say? It's a disgusting accusation." "It's enough," Clara's voice, though weak, cut through the tension like a shard of glass. It held a new, unnerving authority. "I know about Sienna, Julian. I know about the apartment on Park Avenue. I know about the bracelet, the trips, the gallery expansion plans. I know everything." The silence in the room was absolute. Julian stood frozen, his mouth agape. Then something in him broke. The mask of the harried, devoted husband slipped away, revealing the cold, selfish man. Beneath, his shoulders straightened, and his expression shifted from shock to defiant contempt. "Fine," he said, his voice hardening. "You want the truth?" "Yes, I'm with Sienna. She's vibrant. She's alive. She doesn't remind me of death every time I look at her. What did you expect me to do? Waste my best years sitting in this room watching you fade away? The money was just sitting there. I put it to use." Clara absorbed each cruel word without flinching. She saw Nina coil, ready to spring, and placed a frail, restraining hand on her arm. "Get out," Clara said, her voice calm, final. "And don't bother coming back." He left without another word, the door clicking shut behind him, with a sound of absolute finality. Only then did the tears come, silent and hot, for the man she had loved, for the life they had planned, for the baby they had lost. Nina held her, her own body shaking with rage and grief. That evening, Mr. Sterling made his final visit. He looked older, weighed down by the solemnity of his task, but his eyes were clear and steady. "It is all in order, Clara," he assured her, placing a leather-bound folder on her bedside table. "The trusts for the research foundations are established. The donations are arranged. The timing is precisely as you wished." "And the other matter?" Clara asked, her voice a whisper. "The special bequest is prepared. The delivery instructions are explicit and unbreakable." He paused, his kind eyes searching her face. "My dear girl, are you still certain?" Clara managed a faint smile. "More than ever." He spent his life looking at surfaces, at paintings, at beautiful women, at dollar signs. It's time he looked deeper. As December bled its last days, Clara's world shrank to the four walls of her room. The pain was a constant companion, but she wore it like a cloak. Her plan was her anchor. Mr. Sterling and Nina worked like silent sentinels around her, ensuring every detail was perfect. The centerpiece of her design, the object of her final artistic statement, was waiting in a specially constructed crate in Mr. Sterling's office. A piece she had poured the last of her strength into designing. A piece she had commissioned from a master glassblower under the guise of a memorial project. It was not just an object, it was a verdict. Julian, from what the private investigator reported, had taken Sienna to Aspen for the holidays. They were skiing on Clara's money, drinking champagne in lodges her inheritance had paid for. Utterly oblivious to the storm gathering in their wake, on New Year's Eve, the snow fell softly. Blanketing the city in a deceptive peace, Clara was fading in and out of consciousness, her breaths becoming shallow, papery whispers. Nina never left her side, holding her hand, whispering stories of their childhood, of sun-drenched days in their parents' garden. "Is it ready?" Clara murmured, her eyes closed. "It's all ready, Clara," Nina whispered back, tears streaming down her face. "Everything is just as you wanted." Small, peaceful smile touched Clara's lips. "Good." In the early hours of New Year's Day, as the city slept off its celebrations, Clara Delaney took her final quiet breath. She was holding her sister's hand, and on her face was an expression not of pain, but of profound, unshakable certainty. The call to Julian in Aspen was made by Nina. Her voice was cold, stripped of all emotion. "Clara's gone. The funeral's on the 5th. Try to drag yourself away from the slopes long enough to show up. We wouldn't want to give people more to talk about than they already have." The stage was set. The players were in position. Clara had signed her final work of art, a masterpiece of consequence. All that was left was for the curtain to rise. The air in the cathedral was thick with the scent of lilies and quiet sorrow. Light streamed through the stained glass windows, painting colored patterns on the stone floor where Clara's simple, elegant casket rested, adorned with a single spray of white orchids, just as she had specified. The church was filled with friends, colleagues from the art world, and the many people whose lives Clara had gently touched. Dr. Evans sat in a back pew, her head bowed. Julian arrived with calculated tardiness, 7 minutes before the service began. He was the picture of a grieving widower in a new, impeccably tailored black suit. His performance was flawless. He accepted condolences with a practiced, broken-hearted dignity, his hand lingering just a moment too long with sympathetic women. He even delivered a moving eulogy, his voice cracking with manufactured emotion as he spoke of Clara's light, her talent, her brave fight. In the front row, Nina's hands were clenched into white-knuckled fists on her lap. Sienna had the sense not to sit with him, choosing a spot halfway back, partially obscured by a pillar. She wore a tastefully somber dress, but her eyes, like Julian's, were already scanning the crowd, assessing, calculating the impression they were making, the real performance. However, began 3 days after the earth had swallowed Clara's remains. Julian received a crisp, formal call from Mr. Sterling's office, summoning him for the reading of the will. The instructions were explicit. He was to come alone. No guests. No lawyer. He arrived at the old wood-paneled law office overlooking Madison Avenue, dressed in a navy pinstripe suit, the uniform of a successful man about to come into his own. He carried himself with an air of weary entitlement, the grieving husband, ready to assume the burdens of his fortune. Across the street, in a chic cafe, Sienna waited, no doubt already, mentally spending what she believed was her share. The conference room was imposing. Mr. Sterling sat at the head of a vast mahogany table, Nina to his right, court stenographer, and a videographer with a quiet, professional demeanor completed the scene another of Clara's specific requests. "Before we begin," Mr. Sterling said, adjusting his spectacles, "your wife stipulated that this proceeding be recorded in its entirety. You have no objection?" Julian waved a dismissive hand. "Of course not. Let's get on with it." Sir Sterling opened a leather binder. I, Clara Elizabeth Delaney, being of sound mind, Do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament. It followed was a meticulously orchestrated unraveling. First came the small personal bequests. Her art supplies and personal sketches to a local community arts center. Her collection of art books to the New York Public Library. It's a specific, valuable painting to Dr. Evans in gratitude for her care. Julian shifted impatiently. It was here. For the main event, Mr. Sterling cleared his throat, moving to the next section. As to the remainder of my estate, including all funds inherited from my parents' estate, all properties purchased with said funds, and all investments made with them. Julian leaned forward slightly, a hungry gleam in his eye. Hereby bequeath the entirety of these assets, is valued at approximately $2.8 million. We split equally between the National Blood Disease Foundation and the Mount Sinai Hospital Oncology Research Department. For the specific study of rare hematological conditions, the color drained from Julian's face.
What?
He breathed, the word barely audible. Furthermore, Mr. Sterling continued, as if he hadn't spoken. I direct that all properties purchased with my inheritance, including but not limited to the apartment at 1040 Park Avenue, be liquidated immediately. With the proceeds to go to the aforementioned charities? This is insane, Julian blurted, surging to his feet. She can't do this. I'm her husband. That money's mine. Please sit down, Mr. Delaney, Mr. Sterling said, his voice like cool steel. There is more. Julian collapsed. Back into his chair, his facade crumbling into stunned disbelief. To my husband? Julian Thomas Delaney, the lawyer read, his tone becoming almost theatrical. I leave two things. First, this letter to be read immediately. What a cream-colored envelope across the polished table. And second, he nodded to Nina. Nina, her expression one of cold satisfaction, reached beside her chair and lifted a long, flat object wrapped in plain brown paper. She placed it on the table in front of Julian with a soft, definitive thud. Julian stared at it, uncomprehending. With trembling hands, he tore open the letter and began to read aloud as instructed. My dearest Julian, by the time you read this, I will be gone, and you will be discovering that the future you built for yourself was made of sand. His voice shook, continued, each word a hammer blow. I knew about Sienna. I knew about the apartment, the jewelry, the trips. I knew it all. I also knew about the baby, our baby, that I lost while you were choosing light fixtures for your new life with your mistress, the child you never knew existed because you were never there to see. This letter isn't about punishment, Julian. It's about reflection. The object I have left you is my final piece. I designed it myself. It is a mirror. But not just any mirror. It is flawless, gilded, and perfectly honest. It has seen the truth of my face in my final days, and now it will show you yours. Every day, I want you to look into it. Really. Look. See the man who abandoned his dying wife. See the man who traded his family's legacy for trinkets and lies. See the man who was too busy playing house with a fraud to notice he was about to become a father. The glass will never lie to you, even though you have spent a lifetime lying to yourself. Don't bother looking for the money. It's gone. Don't bother contesting this. Mr. Sterling has made it unbreakable. Don't bother running to Sienna. She will be gone the moment she realizes the well has run dry. All you have left is your reflection. I hope you learn to live with it. With all the love I once had, Clara. The silence in the room was profound. Julian stared at the letter, then at the wrapped object, his face a mask of dawning horror. He tore at the brown paper, revealing an exquisitely crafted large rectangular mirror. Its surface was perfect, its frame a simple, modern band of brushed gold. In its flawless glass, he saw his own pale, shocked face staring back, a man watching his entire world dissolve. This is impossible, he whispered. The process of asset seizure is already underway, Mr. Sterling informed him calmly. Your joint accounts are frozen. Property management company has been notified. As if on cue, Julian's phone began to vibrate on the table. Sienna's name flashed on the screen, followed by a rapid series of text messages that everyone could see. Julian, there are men here with a notice. They say we have to leave now. What is happening? Our cards are being declined. Julian, answer me. His world was collapsing in real time. Mr. Sterling methodically detailed the forensic accounting Clara had commissioned, documenting every fraudulent transaction, every hidden transfer. By the way, Nina added, her voice dripping with icy satisfaction, the hospital board was very interested in the documentation regarding Sienna's fraudulent nursing credentials. The police are likely at her door right now. Julian slumped in his chair, a broken man. He picked up the mirror, its weight immense in his hands, stared into his own reflection, and for the first time he seemed to truly see himself. The successful gallery owner, the charming husband, but the hollow, voracious cheat he had become. There must be something left, he mumbled to the reflection. The gallery, my accounts. The gallery was heavily mortgaged against. Your wife's assets, Mr. Sterling explained patiently. As for your personal accounts, the records show consistent, substantial transfers to Miss Sienna's personal expenses. Julian's phone buzzed again. A final message from Sienna. Don't have a calling to bother calling. You're not worth going to jail for. Line between his past and his future had been drawn, not in ink, but in glass. And in that perfect, cruel mirror, Julian Delaney was finally, utterly alone with the man he had made himself into. The small studio apartment in Queens was a universe away from the Park Avenue penthouse. The air smelled of takeout and cheap laundry detergent, not expensive perfume and polished marble. Julian Delaney sat on the edge of his futon, the only piece of furniture besides a small table and a single chair. On the wall opposite him, perfectly centered, hung Clara's mirror. Its flawless surface was a daily accusation and his only remaining luxury. The fallout had been swift and total. Sienna had vanished, leaving behind a trail of maxed-out credit cards and a single, furious voicemail before she disappeared, presumably, to avoid the fraud charges. His gallery had been seized by creditors. His name, once whispered with respect in art circles, was now a synonym for betrayal. The only family who still spoke to him was his younger sister, Elise, and even her calls were brief, strained things today. He was preparing for a job interview, not for a directorship or a consultancy, but for an entry-level position at a small art storage and logistics company in Long Island City. The suit he laid out was the last decent one he owned, and it hung loosely on his frame. He had lost weight, the weight of stress and shame. Before he left, he did what he had done every morning for the past 4 months. He stood in front of the mirror. His therapist, a nonsense woman named Dr. Lowell, whom Elise had found, had given him the task. Ask the reflection what it sees, she'd said. Not what it wants to see. What do you see? He whispered. To the gaunt, gray-haired man in the glass, the arrogant glint was gone from his eyes, replaced by a hollow, haunted look. The lines around his mouth were deeper, etched by months of silence and regret. His phone buzzed. A text from Elise. Don't forget to eat something. Remember what Dr. Lowell said about honesty. The subway ride was a lesson in humility. He stood crammed between strangers, watching his reflection flicker in the dark glass of the window. He saw a middle-aged man, anonymous and frayed. For the first time, he wondered about the stories of the people around him, their struggles, their own hidden shames. He had never truly seen people before, only their utility. The interview was in a nondescript building near the water, the reception. Area was small, the furniture outdated. Gave his name to the receptionist, his voice feeling foreign. Mr. Delaney, a voice said. He turned. Standing in the doorway was Leo Campbell, a former client. A man whose collection Julian had once curated with condescending expertise. Leo's expression was unreadable. Leo, didn't expect to see you here. Clearly, Leo said, his voice flat. Why don't you come in and tell us why you are? The interview room held 3 people. Leo, a woman from HR, and the owner, a sharp-eyed man named Ben Cruz. Leo did most of the talking. Why are you here, Julian? The real reason? Julian's hands were sweating. He thought of the mirror of Clara's letter. He heard Dr. Lowell's voice. Own your story. It's ugly, but it's yours. I'm here because I destroyed my life. He began, the words feeling like ground glass in his throat. He didn't soften it. Told them about Clara, about the affair, about the money, about the baby he never knew. He told them about the mirror, about the will, about the man he saw in it every day. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to start over as someone else. Someone who can look in a mirror without wanting to look away. The room was silent when he finished. Leo leaned back, studying him. Why should we believe you? Your past shows a profound lack of character. Shouldn't believe me, Julian replied, his voice raw. Not yet. I have to earn that every day. After the interview, he walked along the waterfront, the Manhattan skyline, a glittering monument to a life he could no longer access. His phone buzzed. A message from Ben Cruz. We need to discuss some details. Can you come back tomorrow? That night, in his sparse studio, he was eating noodles from a cardboard box when a knock came. At his door, it was Elise, holding a small cardboard box. I thought you should have these, she said, her tone not quite warm but not hostile either. She thrust the box into his hands and turned to leave. Elise, wait, thank you. She paused but didn't turn around. It's what she would have wanted, and she was gone. Inside the box were photographs, not of the grand parties or gallery openings, but of the life in between. Him and Clara laughing over burnt pancakes in their first tiny apartment. Clara, smiling, covered in clay in her studio, a ticket stub from a movie they'd seen. At the bottom was a small locked diary. The trembling hand he pried it open. It was Clara's journal from the early days of her illness. He read it all night, each word a fresh wound, she wrote about. Her fear, her hope for the experimental treatment, her love for him. The last entry was a week before she discovered the affair. Julian was here today, seemed distracted, his phone buzzing constantly. He says it's the new gallery space. But his eyes don't meet mine anymore. I tell myself it's the stress that the man I married is still in there. I have to believe it. For us. For the future we planned. He wept then, great heaving sobs that echoed in the empty room. He wept for the man she believed was in there, the man he had buried under greed and cowardice. The next morning he returned to the storage company. Ben Cruz was waiting for him alone. We're creating a new position, Ben said. Client relations and ethical compliance. It involves talking to our clients and our staff about transparency, about trust. Leo thinks it's a terrible idea. I think it's a necessary one. You'll have to tell your story. All of it. Every time. Julian nodded, accepting the grim irony of it. I will. As he left, he saw his reflection in the company's glass door. For a fleeting second, he didn't see the cheat or the failure. He saw a man with a terrible burden, yes, but a man who was, for the first time, choosing to carry it honestly. Months passed. The job was grueling. Telling his story never got easier. But something was shifting. The mirror was no longer just a punishment. It had become a measure. A way to check if the man he was today was any different from the man he had been. One evening, a year after Clara's death, he stood in front of the glass, tying the tie for his one good suit. He was speaking at the dedication of the Clara Delaney Research Library at Mount Sinai, funded by her bequest. He had been invited not as an honoree, but as a living warning. He arrived early, walking the familiar halls. He saw Dr. Evans speaking. With a young couple, the woman was pale, a colorful scarf wrapped around her head. Her husband held her hand, his face a map of worry and devotion. The sight was a physical blow. That should have been him. He had chosen differently, Mr. Delaney. Dr. Evans approached him, her expression neutral. You look different. I am, he said. Too late, but different. Clara never stopped seeing the man you were before the sickness. Before the money, she said softly. She had a faith in people that was unearned at times. I know, he whispered. The ceremony was somber. When it was his turn to speak, he walked to the podium, the eyes of the audience heavy upon him. He didn't use notes. My name is Julian Delaney, he began, his voice clear in the quiet room. And I am here today as a lesson in what not to do. He told them everything. The affair, the theft, the mirror, the child he never knew. He held up the ultrasound photo he now carried everywhere. My wife was carrying this life while I was ending ours. He spoke of the mirror. Clara's final gift to me wasn't a punishment, though I deserved one. It was the chance to face myself, truly, every day. It doesn't redeem me. It just ensures I never forget. When he finished, the applause was not enthusiastic, but it was respectful. It was an acknowledgement of truth, not an absolution. Afterward, as people mingled, Nina approached him. It was the closest they had been since the will reading. She would have hated the speech, Nina said dryly. But she would have appreciated the truth in it. I don't expect anything from you, Nina. Good. She paused. But she believed in second chances. Not at what you had. That's gone. But at being someone new. She handed him an envelope. Inside was a key. The Connecticut house. I'm selling it. I thought you might want to see it one last time. She was happy there. Before. The drive to Connecticut was a journey into a past life. The white colonial house stood as he remembered, though the garden was overgrown. Inside, time had stood still. Her pottery tools were on the sunroom table. A half-read novel was on the nightstand. The smell of her lavender sachet still faintly perfumed the air. He walked through the empty rooms, ghosts of their life together whispering from every corner. In the bedroom, he found another journal, this one from before her illness. The last entry was a joyful, hopeful scrawl. Julian was distant today, but I'm sure it's just work. We're going to try for a baby again next month. He'll be a wonderful father. I know it. He sank onto the bed, the journal falling from his hands. He pulled the mirror from his bag. He brought it, needing its honesty for this, and looked into it. He didn't see the successful man or the broken man. He saw a man surrounded by the echoes of a love he had been too blind to see. A knock on the door startled him. It was Nina. I thought I'd find you here. I found her journal, he said, his voice thick. She never sent it, Nina said quietly. She found out about Sienna the next day. She took a deep breath. The research library. They're starting a partner support program. Counseling, resources. They want someone to speak to families, to tell them how to be. There they want you, me, after what I did. Because of what you did, and what you're doing now. You're proof of the worst, and the possibility of something else. She looked away. She would want you to do it. He looked into the mirror one last time in the house they had shared. The face that stared back was tired and sad, but it was present. It was not hiding. I'll do it, he said, as they left, turning off the lights. He paused at the doorway of the room that was to be the nursery. Do you think she knew? He asked. When she left me the mirror, do you think she knew? It would change me. Clara always saw the best in people, Nina answered, her hand briefly, almost involuntarily, touching his arm. Even when they couldn't see it in themselves. Don't waste it. Outside, the first snow of the new year was beginning to fall. He carefully placed the journal in his pocket next to the ultrasound photo. The mirror was a weight against his side, no longer an anchor to the past, but a compass for whatever future he had left. Goodbye, Clara, he whispered to the silent house. I'm sorry I wasn't who you needed me to be, but I will spend every day trying to be the man you thought I was. Driving away, the house disappearing in the rearview mirror, he felt the shift inside him solidify. Not forgiveness, not redemption, but purpose. A chance to use his profound failure as a warning to keep her memory alive, not as a victim of his betrayal, but as the architect of his accountability. The glass heart she had left him was finally, truly, unbreakable.